Alright, so I got the chat here so I can see it on my phone. Gonna be talking about my song White Magic. I had promised I would do a video talking about it a long time ago, and I never ended up doing it, but I'm a man of my word, so here I am. I'm just gonna be going through the track, each of the sections, and just talking about, well, whatever's interesting about it. Whether it's the music theory, the composition, the arrangement, the instrumentation, anything. Um, some parts have more complex composition, music theory stuff to talk about. Some parts are really simple, but they have cool instrumentation or cool effects and stuff. So yeah, I'll be going through everything. Let's do a quick audio check first. So just so I can make sure that the audio is working properly. Alright, looks like it's working. So yeah, I'll begin in just a second. Alright, let's begin. So first, I'm going to talk about the intro, which is honestly, in my opinion, probably my favorite part about the entire track. I know that sounds a little anticlimactic, like, oh, how's the intro your favorite part? It's just an intro. Well, it's the most complex part when it comes to composition and harmony and melodies. And it's just really cool. It's really baroque. Um, has a lot of counterpoint, descending fifths and stuff. I'll talk about that in detail. But it's basically the same thing that happens here is repeated again at the end of the track, only it's slightly different at the end. And the idea was that it would feel the same, like you wouldn't necessarily realize that it was different unless you listened to the intro again and compared it like side by side. Then you can tell that it's different because it's in a different key and there's more instruments and stuff. But when you start listening to it, by the time you get to the end of the track and you hear the melody again, you think, oh, it's the intro again. And you think that it's kind of just copy pasted when it really isn't. It has a lot of different things to it, which is cool, but it wasn't meant to sound different, and I think I was able to achieve that really well. So let's talk about the intro. Very simple, just 3 instruments here. These pink things here are just effects. I'm not going to be talking about them because they're not really interesting. They're just like little sound effects. This is the important part. So we have 3 voices here. We have 1 layer of harmony, which is chords, very simple chords. Um, And then we have two layers of melody, and you're gonna see that these are similar, but they are not the same. So this second layer of melody is slightly more complicated. It has some more ornamentation to it, and at certain points it does little arpeggios and little counterpoints that the main melody, which is the first one, doesn't do. So let's just listen to the this first section here, which does not repeat, because it's actually not an original section. These first 8 measures of the song are taken from Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. It's a ballet piece that he did, and there's an oboe solo section in one of the movements at the beginning of the movement that has this melody, and it's in a different key. I believe the original is in C, C minor, and my version is in B minor, so that would be one step, half step down. But it's the same melody, and the chords are just very simple, like chords built around the melody just for the sake of supporting it. So let's just listen to this section for now. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite melodies of all time, and that's why I decided to reference it at the beginning of this piece. It's just such a lovely, dark, kind of mysterious, kind of ominous melody, but it's also extremely beautiful at the same time. So first, let's just talk about the chords, since they're extremely simple for this part. So we're starting on an F sharp here. This is a regular F sharp minor, and then we're going down to the B minor. So that's how simple it is. It's just an F sharp minor down to a B minor at the last measure, and then it repeats. So 3 measures of F sharp, and then 1 measure of B minor. And F sharp here is the 5th of the B minor, so this is literally just a 5-1 progression. We're going from the dominant back to the root, and then up to the dominant. So since this is primarily utilizing the dominant, you could almost say that it's the root. We could say that instead of B minor, this is actually an F sharp Phrygian. I wouldn't exactly call it a typically Phrygian sound because it doesn't utilize the G, which would be the minor second, at all. But since the F sharp is the main note here, you could technically say that it's the root if you'd like. But let's just say that it's B minor for the sake of simplicity, because the rest of this section is in B minor. So yeah, let's have a listen to just the chords, just so you can see what it sounds like. You're gonna see that it repeats the F sharp minor chord 3 times, and then it just goes down to the B. Yep, really simple stuff. And then we have the melody, which is kind of outlining the chords in a way. So you can see it starts in the F, which is the root, then it goes up back to the F, and then at the end here it goes down to the B on the. So it's kind of just outlining the chords, and it has some little notes around it. So it's a very simple melody, which is part of why it's so beautiful. Simplicity can really add to the beauty in a way when you do it right. So this is just the main melody by itself. Yeah, so that's it. This is just the Tchaikovsky section. So it's not original. I didn't create this melody. It's from a classical piece, which I strongly recommend you listen to. But what's interesting about this and why I'm bothering, going through it is because immediately after this, I transition into what would be the continuation of the original Tchaikovsky melody, but from here on it's original. So it's almost like a variation on the original piece. Um, so I just took the first 8 measures straight up from the original piece, and then I made a variation. I made a new melody, a new section based on it. So it just continues through like this. Okay, let's talk about this section here, because here it's where it starts to get interesting. So I'm using some more chords here, a lot more chords actually. I'm using pretty much, um, well, not every chord in the scale, but almost every chord, I think. Um, so if you just disregard the chords here, let's just look at the roots, which are repeated in the bass here, just so we have a good idea of what's going on. So we're starting in the root B, we're going up to the 4th E, then we're going down to the 3rd D, then we're going up to the 6th G, then we're going down to the 2nd C sharp, then we're going up to the 5th F sharp, then we're going up to the 6th again, G sharp, G, and then up to A, which is the 7th. So there's kind of a motion here of going like up, down, up, and then it breaks the motion at the end and continues to go up. So that's kind of the logic behind this chord progression. You usually want to have a rhythm to it in terms of like the changes that you're making. So it's a slow climb here. So it starts down, it goes up, then down, then up, then down, then up, and then it just goes up the last 2 chords. And these are all just natural chords. I very rarely use like weird chords. I'll use like just regular triads like 90% of the time, and they're inversions. Sometimes I'll use others, like suspended chords are also cool, and stuff, but most of the time it's just natural triads and diminished chords. Um, Not a lot of fancy 7th, 9th, 13th, you know, none of that. Augmented chords, I very, very rarely, not to say never, use those. So these are all just natural chords following this. So it would be 1, 4, 3, 6, 2, 5, 6, 7. And then we have the melody on top of that, which you can see is doing the same thing. It's outlining the chords again. So we start with 1, go to the 4th, down to the 3rd, up to the 6th, down to the 2nd, up to the 5th, 6th, and 7th. So it's the same movement as the chord progression. It just happens to have other notes around it. And that's really important. The best way to build a melody is that you have a chord progression and then your melody is going to travel from one chord to another. It's going to take this raw transition from one chord to another. I'll play just the 2 chords here, the first 2 as an example. It's going to take this raw transition, this jump from one chord to another. Right, so da, da. It's going to take that jump and it's going to make a bridge for it. So, right, so it's not just da, da, it's da, na, 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 na. Right, you're making a bridge, you're making little steps, like a staircase for it. and that way the chord progression feels much more natural. And then when you finally land on the root of that second chord, it feels very satisfying. It's very complete because you're going through the motions, going through the notes, and arriving properly at where you want to get to without making huge jumps, without, making uh, dissonance or anything like that. So the interesting thing here is also that the second melody starts to get more different. You'll see that it has a lot of similarities, but then at the end of the sections, instead of just holding the same note, it'll go up or down. So here it goes up, here it goes down. And this is roughly following the movement of the chord progression. Not strictly, but it's just roughly following it. And this is just kind of arbitrary, just because it sounded nice. There's not really a rule to it, but it's kind of just going down the scale. Just because it makes it more complete, makes it a little more ornamented, and ornamentation is always good when you do it right. So here's just the main melody. And here's just the secondary melody. Right, so you can see that it's literally like a staircase, like a little tiny staircase going up or down to the next note, where you want to start the next chord. And it contrasts really well with the main melody, because the main melody just sits at the same note, and then while you're holding that, the secondary melody kind of pulls you toward the next one. Right, and then we're going to get into the last section here, which is a very cool section. It's like a little descending fifths section, which is basically going down and then up and then down and then up, at least for this first half here. So it's kind of the opposite of what we were doing here. Here we were going, up, down, up, and now here we're going down, up, down. So it's almost like the reverse of what we were doing in the previous section, but it's the intervals here are important. So here we're in G, right? We have a G chord here, which is, yeah, G major, the sixth chord, and we're going down to the second. So from G to C sharp. C sharp diminished, by the way. Then we're going up to the fifth, and then we're going down to the root. So we're actually making, our way down slowly. And what you notice here is that it's not exactly a rule, but the bottom note here, so the root of this chord is the top of the next chord. And then when we go down, we only go down by one step, so it's not a big jump. It's literally just the smallest jump you can do. And then the same thing happens. So the bottom of this chord is the top of this chord. And that's what makes them sound so good together, because they have a note in common, and that makes them transition really well. So every time you have a chord, the best chords that you can transition to are the ones that share a note with the original chord, and that's why going through this motion here is really smooth, really satisfying. And then we have this kind of like the melody here, the secondary melody as well, going up, then down, and up, then down, and then it just goes up for the end section. and then we just resolve back to the root, which is B minor. So it just ends in the B minor. It goes from F sharp, which is again the fifth, right? Remember, it's the chord that we started right here in the beginning. It goes from that F sharp back to down to the root of B minor. Always like one of the, well, the perfect cadence, right? The quote unquote the best way to resolve a chord progression is just going from the fifth to the first. So yeah, not much to say there. However, one thing that I'll note real quick is that if you go here, you can see that the Ableton here highlights the notes that are in the scale. This is something that I don't necessarily need because I know which notes are in which scales, but it's just a massive time saver because you don't have to think about it. So it's just like very convenient. But you'll realize here that this very last note is not in the scale. And the reason for that is because it's a deliberate choice, it's not an accident. It's supposed to be a regular, like a natural A here, but instead it's an A sharp. So this is, instead of a minor seventh, which would be the A, it's a major seventh. And a minor scale with a major seventh is a harmonic minor scale. And it's harmonic because that makes your fifth chord a major chord instead of a minor chord. Now that's really nerdy, but it is something that I use in pretty much every song. So it's kind of a big deal, for me at least. And it's a big deal for pretty much all of Baroque music. Bach was the master of the harmonic minor scale, so since he's one of my greatest inspirations when it comes to composing, it's only natural that I would also use it a lot. So here's something that here's how this would sound if it were just a natural A. I'll play this again just so you can compare. Right? So if it were a natural, it would sound like this. Right, so it doesn't sound bad, obviously. It's completely in tune with the song, but it doesn't sound as mysterious, it doesn't sound as malicious as the other one. And that's what I really like about the harmonic minor scale. It just has that really like malignant or evil or mysterious. It's just, it feels right. It's not out of tune, but it doesn't feel perfectly right. There's like a little bit of a dissonance there, and it just creates a perfect amount of tension, in my opinion. And here in the harmony as well, I actually used a regular F sharp minor chord at the end. I could have used an F major chord by raising this one as well, and it would sound different. The reason I didn't was that that we started with an F minor chord here, so I wanted it to be the same chord. Like I wanted it to be the same progression from here to here, which is the same. But I can repeat this section here, and I'll show you what it would sound like if it were a major chord. Right, so if we raise this, here's what it sounds like. Right, so you can tell it's a lot more dramatic, and it does sound cool. It does sound really cool. Maybe if I wrote this in a different day, I would have done that, but I really wanted to use the same chord as the beginning here, so that's why I stuck with the normal minor chord instead of going for the harmonic minor major there. But yeah, that's enough about the intro. This that was already like a very long section just because this is so nerdy when it comes to the music theory part. Now we're gonna get into a very, very like brain dead heavy metal part, and there's not going to be a lot to talk about in terms of music theory. So there's just this transition section, which there's really not at all, nothing going on at all. It's kind of just ambience, holding down that same B minor chord and teasing in the little melody that's going to come in next. But yeah, let's just play through it. Right, and then we get into the heavy metal part here. So let's see, where do we begin? I'm just gonna go show you the drums. So some of you might know that I have a extensive history with making dubstep. That's what got me into music producing, and it's what I've produced for the majority of my music career. And I borrow elements from every genre that I like and every genre that I know. So one thing that I've always really liked about dubstep were the drums, how they were so punchy and so aggressive and so tight. So that's something that I still use. Like, these are pretty much just dubstep drums, and I've just taken them and put them here. So this is what they sound like. Right, so you can see they're super punchy, super aggressive. They're like, like a kick in the nuts and a slap on the face, which is what they're supposed to do, I guess. Um, but yeah, not really special at all. That's kind of all there is to it. So let's talk about the what's going on with the instruments here before we get into the guitars. Because the guitars are recordings, so I'm not going to be able to talk about the notes, but the instruments are mimicking them, so I can talk about these. We have quite a few layers of instruments here, so I'm not going to go into detail into each one, but I'll just show them all to you. So this is the first main block. Kind of like an acid pluck, and it's just playing the same notes as the guitar. We have a very simple melody here, still in B minor. We're just kind of having this pedal on the root note, so repeating the B, and then it goes 3 2 1, 3 2 1, 3 2 1, and then has a little B minor arpeggio at the end. So B, D, F sharp, 1 3 5. Very, very simple melody. And this is also repeating that. Another layer here, just a pluck. This is a deeper one for some bass sound. And this one, just for that like higher end, kind of like a rave chord sound almost, which just gives it that kind of sharp high end. So this is how all the plucks sound together. Yeah, so it's a very like dark synth sound. If you know like Carpenter Brut or Perturbator, like it's that kind of sound, very like dark synth sound. And then we have the guitars. So there's 3 layers of guitars here. Let me just play all of them. Right. So they're just playing that same melody that I showed you. So we have 3 layers here. Let's see. Let's listen to each one of them. These first two are the same. They're different recordings of the same part, and each of them is panned to like one side. So yeah, so they're the exact same thing, but one on each side. And you can see that this is actually I actually recorded this in E, and then I pitched it down to B, so that it would sound deeper. So yeah, I cheated a little bit there. I cheat a lot with my guitar recordings, deal with it. But yeah, so I could get it to sound lower without actually having to tune my guitar that low. I just pitched down the recordings. And then this one is actually the same thing, but it's actually a whole octave up. So it's like 7 recorded in E and then pitched up. And it's in the center. So it's a little bit less prominent, but it really gives it that definition, that especially the chords really gives it that harmonic definition, so there's no mistake which notes are being played. Like if I remove the top one, it just gets really deep. And when I add it back up, it gets that little grit again. Just makes it really dirty, which works really well for this. Yeah, and then in the second section here, we're gonna repeat that, but there's gonna be an ARP coming in. So here's the ARP. Again, extremely dark synth. And this is kind of funny because it's not playing the same like chords as the guitar riff. It even goes down here to the A sharp, which is from the harmonic minor that we talked about earlier. But the guitar doesn't actually go down, the guitar stays in B, and you'll see this in the sub here, it actually stays in B. So it's a little dissonant, but it just works in this case. It doesn't sound dissonant. And then we're going to have a melody come in here that's just going to repeat twice, and then the second repetition it just gets higher pitched by an octave. It's just a simple melody as well. Yeah, not a lot of, not really anything interesting going here, except for these like little pedals, which is also something that I use a lot. So instead of just going down here, like da 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 da, I repeat the same note in between each of the little notes, and it just makes it sound cool. Yeah, it's just a little melodic artifact or ornamentation thing that's just cool sounding. Not really anything special to it. And then this just repeats except higher pitched. Yeah. Anyways, and then here we're actually gonna have a lot going on without having a lot going on. I'll explain that. So we're gonna end here, and it's gonna modulate into a new key. Right, so we're going through the keys here. We started in B. So here B minor, 1, 2, 3. Then we go up to F sharp minor, which was the 5th. Remember, 1, 2, 3. Then we're gonna go up to the 5th of F sharp, which is C sharp, 1, 2, 3. And then we're gonna go up to the 5th of C sharp, which is G sharp, 1, 2, 3. So this is literally just going through the circle of fifths. I have it up here so I could show it. This is the circle of fifths. If you go clockwise, you're going in fifths. If you go counterclockwise, you're going in fourths. So we're here on B. Then we go clockwise, F sharp, clockwise, D flat, clockwise, A flat. Right? So it's literally what I did here. B, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. G sharp is the same thing as A flat, and C sharp is the same thing as D flat, which is what it says here. So B, F sharp, D flat, A flat. Alright, and then it just ends at G sharp, and that's the key that we're going to be in for the rest of the song. You have a little rock organ come in here, a Hammond, which is a classic organ sound, electric organ sound. Right, so this section of the song, and actually the entire rest of the song, is a very party house party type of sound to it, which is uncharacteristic of me, honestly, but I kind of just wrote it on a whim and it sounded good and I went with it. So yeah, we just have a G sharp natural minor here, going down from G to F sharp, then from F sharp to E, then from E to D sharp, and then going back up B, D sharp, F sharp, back to G sharp. So yeah, very simple melody, just down, 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 up, down, 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 up. Works really well. And yeah, this is just kind of like a very basic dance loop. I'll show you the drums again. This is more like house drums, not dubstep anymore, but it's still very conventional. Oh yeah, almost forgot to mention, while we were changing keys back here, we also sped up from 100 BPM up to 125. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, this section is faster. So yeah, it's just a regular dance loop. Then we're going to have the instruments here, which are playing these same chords. So we have the main organ. We have another one more electronic here. And then the plucks again. These are the same as the first section plucks. And we also have some basses here, which are what really give this section the punch that it has. But yeah, as you can see, they're all just playing the same melody, so nothing special. just playing the chords arpeggiated. Different rhythm, but the same chords. So yeah, this is a very simple section, and the only thing interesting that's going to happen here is the guitar solo at the end, which is not interesting melodically. It's just a very standard guitar solo. So yeah, very standard guitar solo, honestly. But what's interesting about it is actually the guitar sound. So it's a different guitar sound from the one that we heard in the first section. It's very metallic, and it's super compressed. It has like a digital over-the-top compressor here, which is common for like basses and other digital instruments, not so common for, you know, traditional instruments. Also has an extra distortion here, amplifier. So it's like very beat up. If I disable all of this, you can hear the raw guitar sound. And then you can see that I completely like destroyed it, almost as if it were ran through like a broken speaker. And it has that like terrible noise at the end because of the compressor. It just makes that terrible like glitch noise at the end, but I really liked that, so I kept it. It makes for a very good transition effect at the end of the guitar solo here. And then something that's also very cool is that I just rendered this audio. So this audio back here, down here, is just this flattened. So I just rendered this individually and duplicated it, and then I put some extra effects on it that sound even more broken. Yeah, so this, it honestly, like, it doesn't even sound like a guitar anymore. It doesn't sound like anything. It sounds like a, I don't know. It sounds like a cryptid at the bottom of the ocean or something. But you can still make out the melody, like just barely. You can hear the melody even without the other guitar, and it just adds a lot of, you know, harmony and ambience to it. Just makes the sound very rich and makes it sound even less like a guitar, which is kind of interesting in this context. Yeah, and like I said, all of this terrible noise at the end of the guitar here, because of the compression, it makes for great transition at the end here. Yeah, so you can see how that distorted noise glitch from the guitar here really kind of fades out just as the next section comes in, and it makes for an excellent transition. It wasn't intentional, but it sounded great and I kept it. So we're going to come into the next section here, which is a sort of similar section. It's also like very dance music kind of sounding, but it has new chords and new melody. So now this is our new chord progression here. And it's also very simple. We're going from the G minor here up to the third. So from G minor to A sharp, then down to E, down to D sharp, which is kind of similar to what we did last time. And then we go up chromatically, which is the most interesting part. So we have the F sharp, up to G, back up to G sharp. So this is like what we call a chromatic run, which is when you just go through all the notes like right? Like when you just go up like that or down, that's what chromaticism is. So here we just go through the same chord, but the root goes up by one chromatically and it goes back to the root here. So just this. Right? Da-na-na. Literally just one by one. This is the same, just and then we have another melody here, which is not a very standard melody. It's kind of like a semi-solo thing. It's probably more of a solo than a melody, but I guess it's technically a melody since it repeats. But it's not very structured because it doesn't exactly follow the chords. It's kind of like free form improvisation sort of thing. But it's technically a motif, a melody, since it repeats. But yeah, I don't really know what to say about it. It's not that interesting. It has that little pedal thing at the end again when you just repeat the note in between each other note, every other note. That makes for that cool effect. I talked about this earlier. But yeah, it's kind of just a standard melody, and then it does that again with a different chord in the second repetition. Here we're going to have an ARP coming in again. It's the same ARP that we used throughout the last section, this one. Right, now it's back, it's just playing a different chord. Right. And now here we're gonna have an actual solo. So yeah, this is an actual solo, and it repeats a lot of these motifs and these little gimmicks, melodic gimmicks. I'm not sure I have the time to talk about it because it's a bit too nerdy and a bit too like extensive, but if you listen to it, you can kind of tell that I'm repeating these little melodic gimmicks that I've used throughout the song, like the little pedal notes, the little ups and downs, like the ladders, you know, ladder up, ladder down, ladder up, ladder down, and stuff. Here's the little pedal again that we just talked about. One thing that I do want to mention, it's quite just a detail, but it is cool. is that you'll notice that when the solo starts, and you can even see this here, the drums and the bass are interrupted for just one measure, and that makes it so much more impactful. So you'll see that when the solo starts, there's the first few notes of the solo here, um, and there's like a break on everything else. So you focus immediately on the solo instrument and stop paying attention to everything else, and then everything else comes back in together, and it makes it really impactful. So it's just like a little detail, a little gimmick, but it's really effective for this kind of thing, this kind of transition. So you see that even if I disable the instruments here, you'll see that there's a break in the beat. Right? Just a tiny short break, but it is there and it does its job. It happens again here. This time I think it's even more effective because the solo just holds a single note. So there's that kind of like very short tension, and then it's resolved immediately just with the impact, and you're back into the solo. So you're like, oh, is the solo gonna end here? And then immediately you get the answer, which is no. And one thing that's kind of cool is that the solo ends with the same as the melody was ending before. So this was a melody that, like a riff that was being repeated. The solo is just freeform improvisation, just whatever, right? Like free, doesn't follow a structure. But it actually ends the same way that the melody was ending. So it brings back that familiar thing that you already heard before. So it really makes it sound like a conclusion to what you were listening to before. And then it's going to end, and it's going to go straight into the reprise of the intro. Right, so I had mentioned in the beginning when we started talking about the intro that the intro was supposed to sound very familiar because it's the same melody. However, it also you're not supposed to be able to tell the difference the first time you listen to the song. You're just gonna know that it's the same melody because you heard it at the beginning of the track, and then you're going to remember it immediately, but you're not going to know what the difference is or if there even is a difference. But in fact, there are a lot of differences. The first difference is that it's faster. So we started the song at 100 BPM and now we are at 125. Ever since this point right here, which is like 3 minutes into the song, we sped up and then we never slowed back down. We just stayed at 125 BPM and we stayed in G sharp minor. So it's faster. It's 25 beats per minute faster, which is quite a lot. It's quite significant. If I play them back to back, you can tell. Listen to this. Right, so it's quite a bit faster. The other main difference is that it's in a different key. So in the beginning we were in B minor, right? We talked about that here, B minor. You can see it. First chord is a B minor. Here we are still in G sharp minor, so we're in the same key as the second and third sections of the song. So we just stayed in that key. And from B minor, that's up, here let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 9 steps up. So it's quite a lot higher pitched this time around. Sorry, 9 half steps up. I meant to say not 9 steps. That would be way higher pitched. So yeah, the point is it's significantly higher pitched than the intro was, and on top of being faster, right? So that makes it a lot. That like those two changes by themselves already make it sound completely different. Now on top of that, it also has two extra instruments. So it has these same bass chords here, these same three instruments that were in the intro, they're still here. These are the bass chords, but it also has the organ on top of it. Which is a much fuller, much more expressive, much richer sound. And then it also has, like dubbing the secondary melody, it also has another keyboard, which sounds kind of, you know, heavenly, angelic even, very just uplifting. And this is a melody that sounds very uplifting despite being in a minor key. It does have that kind of angelic feel to it, in a way. But even if I remove these extra instruments, it'll still sound very different. Right, so here because it's lower pitched and because it's slower, it's much more melancholic. And then at the end here, because it's higher pitched and it's faster, it's much more uplifting, much more hopeful. So these are just like two like tiny differences, tempo and key, and they make an extremely big difference on the final mood of the melody, the emotion that you're trying to convey with it. Now the last difference here is how the melody ends. So here at the beginning, you can see that it goes down to the root. So we're in F here, we talked about this, we're in F, F sharp, and then it's going to go down back to the B, right? So there's a little ladder down. It goes down. At the end here, it goes up, so it's the opposite. It goes up to the B, which is not a B anymore, it's a G sharp, but it goes up to the root instead of going down. And that as well changes the mood of how the song ends. So we go from this dark, melancholic, mysterious going down here, kind of very... Right, and then we end into this kind of epic epic resolution to the song here. So yeah, that's just, you know, you can tell that they are all small differences when you compare these two melodies. When you compare the intro to the outro, they are all small melodies, but there are quite a few. They're all small differences, but there are quite a few of them, which makes for a very great, very grand difference in the end. And it's still similar enough for you to be able to tell that it's the same melody, the same motif, but it's different enough to where the mood, the emotion that it conveys is completely different. So yeah, that's the entire track. That's the entirety of White Magic. All 6 minutes and 40 seconds of it. Um, so yeah, um, I obviously didn't cover every little note, every little chord, every little detail, but I think I got through the entire track and was able to talk about the most interesting aspects about every part. But yeah, I'm still open to questions if anyone has any. Uh, I can go over specific things if you want me to. Anything really about the track that you want to know, I can tell you, probably, unless I don't know myself. Sometimes you just make things intuitively and you don't think about them. But yeah, I'll have some space. I'll leave some space for questions here while I check. Um, Alright, give me a second. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any questions or any comments. Um, but yeah, this will be recorded. Um, this will be available on my YouTube channel as a video, the stream recording. So if you're watching this not live, feel free, and you do have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to respond to your comment and answer your question. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to show it in practice like I would if the questions were sent live, but that's the best we can do. So yeah, I'll take questions on the comment section as well if you're not watching this live. But yeah, I plan on making these again in the future, these types of live streams where I just go over a track. If you also want to suggest which track of mine you would like me to go over next, um, I'll make note of that, and I'll try to go with whatever you guys want to hear. So I'll try to follow the suggestions, and yeah, I think that's it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm gonna be posting all of my music here. I'm running out of time limit on my SoundCloud, so I'm kind of gonna be forced to post more music on YouTube than there, just because of the limit, and I don't want to pay for SoundCloud Pro because it's too expensive, not worth it. Um, but yeah, that's it. So thank you for watching, and yeah, that's it. God bless.